Okay, so I thought we were going to start with chapter 2, but we don't need that. So we're going to go ahead to all the way, and we keep going. We're now in book 8, so make sure you're in book 8. Okay, and then you're going to look for chapter 2, which is a waif, but we're not going to read the first... oh, actually we are. So chapter 2, a waif, in this book it's 725, so get to 725. Marius was still living in the Gorbeau building. He paid no attention to anybody there. At the time, it is true, there were no tenants left in the house but himself and those Jondrettes whose rent he had once paid, without having ever spoken, actually, to either the father or the mother or the daughters. The other tenants had moved away or died, or had been turned out for not paying their rent. One day, in the course of that winter, the sun had come out for a while in the afternoon, but it was the 2nd of February, the ancient Candlemas Day, whose treacherous sun, the precursor of 6 weeks of cold, inspired Matthew Lonsberg with the two... Okay, don't worry about that, that's just the poem. Continue on the next paragraph. Marius had just left his. Night was falling. It was dinner time, for he had simply had to return to the habit of dinner. Alas! O infirmity of the ideal passions! He had just crossed his threshold, which Ma Bourgeon was sweeping at the very moment, muttering at the same time this memorable monologue. What is there that's cheap now? Everything's expensive. People's troubles, that's all. That's cheap. That's free. People's troubles. Marius went slowly up the boulevard toward the city gate on the way to the Rue Saint-Jacques. He was walking thoughtfully with his head down. Suddenly he felt someone elbow him in the dusk. He turned and saw 2 young girls in rags, one tall and slender, the other a little shorter, passing by rapidly, breathless, frightened, and apparently in flight. They had been coming toward him, had not seen him, and jostled him in passing. In the twilight Marius could see their pale faces, hair tangled and flying, dreadful bonnets, tattered skirts, and bare feet. As they ran, they were talking to each other. The taller one said in a very low voice, "The cops came. They almost pinched me at the circle." The other answered, "I saw them. I made tracks." Marius understood, through their breathless talk, that the gendarmes had not managed to capture these 2 young girls. They dashed in under the trees of the boulevard behind him, and for a few seconds made a kind of dim patch of light among the shadows. Marius stopped for a moment. He was about to go on his way when he noticed a little grayish packet on the ground at his feet. He stooped down and picked it up. It was a sort of envelope that appeared to contain papers. "All right," he said. "Those poor creatures must have dropped this." He retraced his steps. He called and did not find them. He concluded they were already beyond hearing, put the packet in his pocket, and went off to dinner. On his way, in an alley on the Rue Mouffetard, he saw a child's coffin covered with a black cloth, placed on 3 chairs and lit by candlelight. He thought again of the 2 girls in the twilight. Poor mothers, he thought. There is one thing sadder than to see their children die, to see them lead evil lives. Then these shadows that had varied his sadness left his mind, and he fell back into his customary train of thought. He began to think again of the 6 months of love and happiness in the open air, in the broad daylight under the beautiful trees of the Luxembourg. "How somber my life has become," he said to himself. "Young girls still appear in front of me, except they used to be angels, now they're ghouls." Okay, so the young girls are important. They call them the Jondrettes. They live in his building, as obviously they're into criminal activities. Really, they're the Thénardiers. The Thénardiers had gotten kicked out of their home for not paying the debts that they had. So they are now living a life of crime. Not a surprise. So now Marius has had interaction with the Thénardiers, which are going by the name Jondrette. So he does not know at this point that it is the Thénardiers. Okay, so we are going to pick up next chapter with A Rose in Misery, which is chapter 4.